Welcome to FM Radio, your go-to podcast for everything in the world of funds management. Whether you're an experienced advisor, a seasoned investor, or just starting your journey, we're here to break down the complex worlds of funds management all in a way that makes sense. Each episode, we'll talk to the experts to get their insights on everything from asset allocation to risk management and give you the inside track on how decisions are made. So tune in and let's turn up the volume on the topics that affect you and your clients. In this episode of FM Radio, we're going to be talking to Jessica Waller from Bridge Private Wealth about her career and advice. How was it shaped by her early years growing up in a family business? And has motherhood made her a better advisor? It's probably made her a more sleep-deprived advisor, although I have to say, you're looking pretty good this morning, Jess. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Look, I think it's really interesting talking to an advisor. I know this is an industry that's very blokey. There's a lot of men, a lot of male advisors. It's great to have someone on here who's giving us, the other side of the story, a different perspective. What I'd love to do to start off with, rather than, delving too much into that, is to really go back to where you started.
Sure.
And how you grow up, because I think everyone's a bit of a nature nurture, your family life and how you grew up. You grew up a bit more of a kind of a small business environment, is that right?
Yeah. So a very small business family. My dad was a serial entrepreneur. And at 45, he decided to have a tree change and he bought a farm and converted it to a vineyard. He decided to go back to TAFE. And so we spent half our time in the Hunter Valley and then half the time at Coogee Beach. So that was one of the businesses he did. He had a milk run for dairy farmers. Mum and dad built and operated childcare centres. So it was really interesting because small businesses, I feel like it's in my blood. And it was my brother and I weren't shielded from it. We were very much part of it.
Well, when you kicked it off saying he is a serial entrepreneur, I thought you were going to say a serial killer. I wasn't sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing. But like you said, he went, what was he, 45, and he decided to go back to TAFE. What TAFE was like?
TAFE to do viticulture. Or? Yeah, viticulture.
Wow.
So to actually grow the grapes to be able to produce the wine. And this was a man that grew up driving trucks, flying planes. He didn't really, he liked wine and he decided why not? And then he had to make money out of it. Of course, everything my dad does, it's about making money. And so he thought, well, we've got this property, let's put some accommodation on it. So we had these boutique cabins that we had them for the weekend for people to come out from the city and stay. And so we used to operate that too.
Wow. It sounds like you would have been, like, if it's all hands on deck, I'd imagine. You're saying like your dad was obviously going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but everybody else would be roped in. I've got this picture of you
100%.
running around from cabin to cabin. It's not just playing in the grapevines, it's actually running around and working.
Well, it was funny because Mum and Dad, they never went on holidays, and they finally booked a holiday and the locum that was meant to help out fell through. And they were already away. And so I was in year 12 and I had to take over the phone to book the accommodation. So I took it into my maths class and was taking bookings. My maths teacher's jaw dropped to the floor because I kept stepping out of class to write in bookings and I thought that was normal. And I think as you grow up, you realize, not every year 12 student was doing that. But yes, everyone was responsible for the business.
Yeah, I think a lot of year 12 students are not even kidults yet. But it's not like you've fast-tracked your growing up process. Yeah. I mean, I sort of thought when you're talking about a vineyard that I had this sort of romantic view of, there's a show I've been watching, which is not necessarily the greatest show, called Drops of God. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's, Camille Leger is sort of the main character. And she's got this incredible ability to, sip wine and has visions of exactly what's in it. She'll see flowers and she'll see fruits and she can actually kind of, imagine exactly what's in the wine. So she has incredible magic powers. I thought that would be you. I thought you would be Camille Leger, but
my mum was a trooper. Think 1,000 flies stuck to you and you've been in the vineyard for 8 hours because it's time to prune and you've got to wrap 8,000 vines around this little wire, and it was blood, sweat and tears, but I guess that's life, and I guess it builds resilience.
So what sort of wine did that draw you to? Have you still got a palate now for certain wines that you like to bring out? What's your quaffing wine at the barbecue?
Do you know what? Having children and not being really in the drinking game for 2 years, my palate's definitely changed. But Hunter Valley, it's Chardonnay, it's Shiraz. I do like a Verdelho, but post children, it's more fruity and lighter now. It's a rosé or it's a Pinot Grigio because I just can't handle the big meaty things anymore.
No, that's true. A light wine and fairly infrequently.
Yeah.
But as you said, like a kind of a baptism of fire and, the serial entrepreneur dad. The small business thing is interesting, though, isn't it? Because there would be so many sort of struggles. And I guess that would really form the way you feel about stuff. I mean, if you then talk to a small business owner, I guess you've got that grassroots empathy for what they're really going through.
Totally. And I think too, like the dinner table conversation was always about the problems with the business. My mum and dad didn't shy away from having the hard conversations and what they were dealing with us. So, it was staffing issues or cash flow, or it could be like there's a risk, the dairy farmers deregulation. My dad had to go through that and lost 60% of his, and he just openly spoke about it and how was he going to recover the revenue. And so it was always a problem solving exercise, and I guess it sort of taught me, he shared the problem, not that his 15 and 17-year-old kids are going to help him solve that, but it gave us exposure to just thinking more laterally about it. And I definitely think that problem, if you share it, more perspectives definitely help you form a path forward.
I think that's interesting, though, because, my idea, maybe I'm wrong, but the Aussie male is not someone who tends to talk about anything. A lot of things are buried inside, not shared. The pressure builds up and they just kind of, they're carrying the problems of the world around with them. Sounds like your dad was someone who was probably a little bit counterculture, going, well, I'm happy to talk about it. Let's all talk about it because we're all in this together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too that it could be the psychology of money. It's kind of like it goes through the generations. That his dad was very much didn't tell anything. He was a tough guy. He didn't share anything, and he probably saw the flaws of that with his family. So he decided to rewrite the rule book with his kids. But it was very much, you've got to be uncomfortable. The growth came from the uncomfortable, and just to push the envelope where you could. So, and
also, it sounds like you've gone through the school of hard knocks. I'm probably exaggerating that, but you do learn from, the family's mistakes or your dad's mistakes. Where are we going to go next? How do we pivot the business completely and still make money, still make a go of it? So if that's what was happening in your family, how does that play through now that you're an advisor? Are you seeing that you are able to have those conversations easily, or is it still a difficult thing when you sit down with someone who's another serial entrepreneur? How do you get them to open up and really not just open the books, but actually tell you what's really going on and what they're really feeling and hoping?
It's really a bit of empathy, because they never tell you what's really happening, and that they're uncomfortable and it's uncertain, but it's all beneath the surface. So like you said, that the general stereotypical males holding it all in, and it's just a couple of crumbs you put out there, and it's the olive branch. They go, oh, okay, it's a safe spot. Okay, I will open up a little bit. And it's like opening a clam. It starts small and it slowly gets bigger and bigger, and then they start telling you everything that you didn't think that the conversation would have gone down to. I'm worried about my daughter's boyfriend, and it goes into this conversation that we weren't even talking about the kids' financial future. But it's just having telling a good story can also help encourage that. And I love telling my story because I've got so many ridiculous things that we've done for the family that they can go, oh, I don't feel so bad that I made my daughter, because I go, don't worry, we were child labor.
You haven't shared any of the ridiculous things you've done. I mean, what would be an example of how extreme it got?
Oh, we had the responsibility that my mum and dad left with me. I just, I have helicopter my two-year-old, so I don't know how they let me go and make mistakes. So running a staff meeting because they couldn't get there. And I'm 22-year-old going, how am I going to talk to 15 childcare workers and introduce them to the meeting? And mum and dad go, oh, you'll work out what you'll say. I'm thinking, this is not my responsibility. They're like, oh, we're running late. We'll be there soon. It's all of those little things that testing me, but trusting me to be able to deliver what they were hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, what great training, though, because I can imagine when you first started out, you'd have a few clients who were probably twice your age.
Yes. Being a 20, because I was with my industry experience, I was still quite young when I became an AR. I was 24. So as Joel said, you've got to add something to this client meeting. And this is a 40-something-year-old person who's very successful. What value are you going to add to that meeting? And so in the early days, yes, I was technically sound, but the way that they knew that I had the business experience was to be able to talk about my own personal family business experience.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Joel, I mean, let's talk about the whole Bridge thing. Like, how did it all sort of start? How did you get involved with Bridge?
Yeah. So Joel left ANZ. He wanted to go out on his own. He started the business with an accounting practice in 2008, just before the GFC. And he was 2 years in, and I literally enrolled on Seek, and there was a job there and it sounded fun, and I've always wanted to do financial planning. I had some work with Shadforth, but I didn't like the corporate model. That it was when they merged Guest McLeod and Shadforth. I didn't want to be part of a big thing. I wanted to be in something small and nimble and client focused, and the rest is history. I joined in 2010. So we've been working together 16 years, and I've been a partner with him for 12. So it's been
wow.
Yeah, it's almost like a family. And interestingly, most of our team haven't come from financial planning experience. They've come from different industries, and we've taught them from the bottom up. And I think that's really helped with our culture in our business.
Well, how so? What? Because I would imagine that there's not a factory, but there's obviously a process that's turning out people who are, trained to be, financial planners, and to, there's a lot of things you have to do and tick lots of boxes to be able to be in that role. But that's interesting. You're saying it's actually a positive that someone who maybe has come from outside the industry, very different perspective and experience.
Yeah.
How do you think that's a positive when they come in and say, okay, well, now I'll learn how your industry works, but I'm bringing something of myself? How is that good?
I think when we talk about client first, that's what they learn first. So they understand the experience that the client has to have within Bridge. And then once they get to understand that, then we build the technical, because you can teach anyone the technical nuances. And the way that the industry is going, I don't know how the PY is ever going to be the advisors that we are today, because they want to go straight from PY into giving the advice, where paraplanning just becomes this AI tool now that the input goes in. And I think that it's a lost skill there. So all the team members that we've got, it's been a really slow build for them to understand the knowledge, and they're not looking to fast track becoming an advisor. So Joel and I are the advisors, and we've got a team behind us that are very happy to be the support. And it works really well because clients only sing praises about our team members, which is fantastic. And we're trying to be nimble enough to say, well, if AI is going to replace a lot of this compliance work that we're doing, then let's have the right team members who don't have the legacy issues that the industry has had. And we're trying to rubber out some of those history lines, and having different stories and different perspectives around different industries. It's clients can have really interesting conversations with our team members.
Yeah. We talk about, I guess recruitment or team building, or however you want to talk about it. People is probably the biggest challenge for so many, small to medium businesses. How do you attract the right people? How do you retain the right people? Give them the career path. It sounds like you've gone more to the other side. Just say, look, if we get the right personality, the right attitude, life experience, they're not madly trying to go from 0 to 100, and they're happy to be part of the team. That's like, it's trying to find the right personality type, attitude type, team player. Then it'll gel, and you'll get to keep them for a bit longer. Which, it's maybe it's very sort of counterintuitive to what some of your colleagues might be doing in their companies.
Yeah.
But it's obviously working for you.
Yeah. And look, we don't want to aggressively grow the business. We don't want to take on 10 advisors. We don't want to scale. We're happy to organically grow, have good clients and have a great team. I think that there's plenty of money to be made. But we don't want to build a mega machine, because I think that you lose the love of what you do when you start to build to that level. You become manager meter after manager meeting, and you're not seeing clients, you're not hearing their stories, you lose that. And I think that's important to Joel and I.
Yeah, so it can grow, but it's got to grow at its own pace that allows you to stay in touch with it. You'd never want it to get away from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And listen, I've said this before, I've always loved the name Bridge. And I always think, was it named that just because there's a Sydney Harbour Bridge?
Well, look, to be honest, it started that way. It did. And we're not marketing people, Peter. And we sat in a room and we thought, let's just start. And we just started writing words down. And we're like, well, we're in North Sydney and there's a bridge and it's a beautiful bridge. And then we're going down the history of it. And we're like, well, it is bridging the gap of knowledge. And we just kept going back to this word. And I'm sure with your history of, wild ideas get legs. So that's just where it landed. And it isn't some mission statement. It was just Joel and I, small business, going, okay, we're wearing our marketing hat on and our branding hat.
Yeah, I'm sure you wear lots of hats a lot of the time because you just have to. But yeah, I just went straight to, it is the bridge. As you said, it is the gap. How do we get from here to there to where I want to be? Could I even attempt to make this big leap? The bridge is the thing that's going to get you there. So, I think it's a great name. But I think you've already given a bit of a hint, but that bridge partnership dynamic and how are you guys different and how are you sort of complementary? Like, is there something similar about you guys? Are you just like, a brother and sister from different mothers, sometimes, or you also like got different strengths?
Yeah, look, I think we definitely have different strengths and weaknesses, but we value the same thing. So Joel and I will think very differently, but ultimately we want to focus on the same end goal. And I think so Joel and I do a lot of joint meetings. Sometimes we don't, but we love doing joint meetings because the client gets not one perspective, and we'll walk out, we'll have very different notes from the same meeting, because we're hearing different things. And it comes back to that sounding board that Joel will see different complexities, and we're very comfortable of disagreeing with each other in the room. And I think the client likes that because they're coming to us to help them think. Our clients are sophisticated. They've got a wealth of knowledge in their own industry. They don't want to be told what to do with their life. They want to be helped to come to that decision themselves. So it is an open communication, open framework around that meeting to say, well, let's just put everything on the table, and it's a discussion. And how can we solve the problem? Because we know what our responsibility is, and it's to hold both the technical complexity, but we both know we're responsible for the emotional weight of that decision too, whether it be retire or downsize, upsize. Sometimes the client looks at you to say, well, you know me, what would you do now that we've had this conversation? So you've got to be comfortable to say, well, wholeheartedly with conviction, this is the right thing for you.
Yeah, I really love that. And you talked about, being the sounding board. I think you even put on LinkedIn in part of your blurb, which you probably parked years ago and haven't revisited, but it uses the term pragmatic financial sounding board. Do you get a lot of that where people just go, look, I'm happy to share with you. I've got this dream. Maybe it's a crazy dream. Tell me if I'm crazy. Yeah. Let's throw it around. What are some examples of that?
I had a client recently. She wants to do a year in, I'm going to not say this wrong, but Norway, there's an area where 9 months is in the dark.
Sounds like fun.
Svensson, I'm pronouncing this wrong.
That sounded good to me.
Yeah, and she was like, oh, my friends think I'm crazy. And her balance sheet, she's strong. She can do this. She could take a sabbatical and do it. And I said, well, let's do it. Let's model it. Let's see what it looks like. And she actually couldn't, she thought I was joking. I said, no, this is important to you and you've been talking about it for 3 years. Let's run the numbers and work out how can we get you there. And it might be 3 months, not 12 months, but would you still do it? She's like, absolutely. And so she's now got this, she's excited. She's really burnt out with work. And this has given her a project to really, really feel better about her position of, change of business structures. And she's just dealing with awful meetings and nothing's giving her joy. And so she walked out of the room bouncing. She's like, I can't wait to go and research this and start putting the numbers together for you. Like, I'm not going to say no if that's important to the client. And if it's not going to financially devastate them, why not? Life's short.
Yeah, that's right. And if you can show them that it's possible and show them, this is how we could kind of do it. If you really, really want it, if this is something really driving you and giving you a reason to get out of bed in the morning because you're working towards this goal, at least try it. At least share that dream. I mean, there's no point in bottling it up. If you've got advisors like you to talk to, why wouldn't you use that?
Yeah, and it's the 3 a.m. test. What's keeping you up at 3 a.m? And sometimes it's the I don't feel like I'm doing anything with my life. And you get that a lot in the late 40s, early 50s, where they've worked so hard. They're kind of getting financially secure enough to do things like this, but they've got all this head noise to think I can't. And so it's the permission. You can
have an adventure before it's too late to have the adventure.
Yeah. So, I love that. I love doing that work.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I mean, it sounds to me, when I was first reading about the sounding board, it sounded like they were lying on a couch sharing their dreams with you and you were the psychoanalyst. But it sounds like you're quite happy to see yourself in that way as well.
You in the house, sometimes you're a marriage therapist and sometimes you're a psychologist around the history around their parents' money habits and why they're feeding into their life now. Some wild conversations around the psychology of money.
Oh, absolutely. You could work out why you're so risk averse, and it's probably something to do with how they grew up, the house they grew up in, and how mum and dad felt about money or even investing being scary.
And I asked that with every new client. I said, what was your life like with your parents and the upbringing? Because it says so much, and sometimes it's not what's said, and it's where there's all these blockages in it, and you can't understand why the client is not doing what they said they were going to do, and it comes back to, oh, okay, that's what's happening.
Yeah, they're locked in, but they're not sharing that with you, and they can't break the shackles.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting. I mean, I'll just go again back into Bridge and the website, and it talks about the culture that it's really driven by the needs of clients. I mean, hearing you chat today, I mean, that's very clear that it is so client focused. I mean, the language that you say is everything we do is directed with expertise and care to meet those outcomes. Is there an example recently, I guess? I mean, because that sort of can sound, words on a website, they can sound sort of dry. They can sound very professional. It feels like it should be read by a voiceover, but you kind of go, bring it back to something basic, I guess, layman's terms.
Yeah.
Is there a good example of that, I guess, recently even?
So I've just come back from mat leave, and 6 weeks into my mat leave, and I was a crazy sprint with new client work, getting it done before Vaughn was born. And I had a really emotional attachment to a client. She had a same difference, and she had 2 boys, similar age gap, 6 months ahead of me with her second, and her husband had passed away. And so part of the advice was me helping her, one, get the life proceeds from an industry super fund, which we've all been there. We know how awful the experience is. But 2, it was, well, what does she do? Because he was the breadwinner. So he hadn't insured her enough. And so she had come to me with, my husband's passed away, you've come highly recommended. What do I do? So I could see I'd given her the advice. We'd done the feedback. I went on maternity leave, but I could see in my emails that she'd asked some questions and she kept saying, don't worry, ignore me. And so I called her and I said, no, I'm coming out of mat leave to have this meeting with you because you were drowning and you need some help. And the advice was really simple. She wanted to invest it to have passive income, but it was too soon. And we decided to change the tack to say, let's just keep it simple. Let's just offset the loan and we'll just take our time with where markets were too. It just felt not right timing. And she was so grateful that I was there having a meeting with her, and I'm feeding my baby, she's feeding her baby. We're having this real raw conversation. I don't think I showered that day. And she appreciated it. And it was good because we wound back the complexity, because her emotions changed around the advice, and we decided to take it a slower process. So it was wetting her feet with it, and we expanded our time frame on how we were going to deliver this. And she was really appreciative. So the care there and the client coming first, that's I think a good example of how that looks. Not that I would do that for every client. in that leave, that was I could probably get away with doing this for a new mom too.
Well, I can imagine you'd be looking in the mirror. You'd be saying, for the sake of fortune, that I could be you. I would want someone to hold my hand. And actually, it must be so hard in those situations for a client to just even think rationally. Like the emotions would just be spinning.
Yeah. And she had no one in her corner, and that was the problem. The bank didn't want to give her advice because they were obviously terrified because she wasn't working and they had this mortgage, and she wanted advice around fixed because she had a fixed loan and a variable. And then we had we're dealing with this industry super fund, which he had passed away. He'd passed away 6 months, and she still hadn't had an outcome with this industry super fund, and she didn't have any money. And so it was me that had to step in and use my industry experience and know exactly where and what I could say to them to make them move. And I felt really disappointed that I had to do this, that they couldn't just honor the birth certificate. They had to go into deep dive. I was just so disappointed. And you can see why we have some blemishes in fin services because of this client experience. But for her and for us, it was a great outcome. I was able to, within 2 weeks of getting my hands on, that we had certainty around getting a payment. But she was nowhere with 6 months, and no one was answering her calls. So a bit disappointing, but a great outcome for her.
I mean, I guess that's the difference between a good advisor and a bad advisor. Not that there are that many bad advisors out there, but it really does come down to that connection, that willingness to step up when needed, that empathy, that knowing that there are people like your client. I can imagine there'd be similar situations, client going through a divorce or, people approaching retirement, and things get quite overwhelming to be able to sit down with, a good advisor who can just calm everything down so that you can actually go, let's just lay it out. Let's actually really picture the outcomes. Let's model it for you. And as you said, in this case, let's not make a rash decision. Let's not move forward just for the sake of moving forward. Maybe we can actually just sit for a while and think about it a bit more, and that'll be great for everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's important. People think that they have to do something today, and you don't. You can take your time, because how you feel about these major life decisions will be very different today as they will be in 3 weeks' time after you've had some time to think, go on a holiday potentially. I think there has to be time to not live in the vacuum, to make major changes. And I try to slow the client down, because they also have this time pressure of, I need to get it done because I'm not earning money. And let's stop. You're worried about a couple of dollars in an interest savings account. Don't worry. Over the long term, you're better to make the right decision than a fast decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know actually where you, I've always sort of thought you're a bit of an Energizer bunny personality-wise. and talking about actually going, well, I'm on maternity leave, but I'm actually going to go and look after clients at the same time. How do you find the energy? Because as you were saying, like, you've got, what, a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old?
7-month-old.
7-month-old? Like, that's crazy. Yeah. I don't even know. How do you find the energy, and how have you found that adjustment, that balance, that juggling, and how do you find the energy to sort of keep everything working?
It's funny because having 2 young boys, it definitely has taken a lot of the energy, the excess energy that I've had, and every minute counts. And you have to be so intentional about how you spend your time. And I think, having our conversation earlier about my family, I realize that I need a project, and I always need to be building something. So I find that I work best if I've got something that's happening, and prioritizing sleep. Albeit broken, and it can be pretty wild some night. My husband and I, he also has his own business. We agree that we have to get up before the kids, because you've got to start your day with time to think and get ahead of it, opposed to chasing the day. And that's the worst feeling. So sometimes at the moment, the alarm is starting with a 4 at the moment, but that's because the kids are getting up early. So we have to keep creeping earlier and earlier to get that sacred me time. But look, it's not perfect. And on those really awful days, creatine, I'm a new adopter of creatine for the mental clarity, and it does really work.
Does it?
Yeah.
Because when you said that, I thought, are you turning into Arnold Schwarzenegger?
No.
I thought it was something that bodybuilders were into, but you're saying it's actually really good for mental sharpness.
Yes, and this is
Really?
all new, and it's all over the health podcast, and so I thought, well, why not? You know, the strength training that I'm doing at the moment is 1 and 2 kilo dumbbells because I'm at the bottom of the fitness mountain at the moment. But I definitely think clearer when I've had some creatine.
Okay,
so that's my little secret weapon.
I haven't heard about that theory at all, so I'm now going to have to do some research. But I had heard about. I was reading something recently. They were saying the first hour of the day is the most important part of the day. Whatever you do in that first hour, as you said, you obviously, I don't know whether you even get an hour, but just setting the alarm with something with a 4 in front of it means you've got potentially a chance where the two adults without distraction can actually plan their day.
Yeah.
You know, maybe even do some push-ups, like whatever it is, some sort of a routine that sets you off on the right path.
Yeah.
Sounds key.
Yeah. Yep, and we take turns too, so that's so we don't fight, because we were both dying to get to the gym or both dying to have some alone time. So we literally have to carve it out in our calendar, otherwise we fight over whose turn it is to go to the gym.
It's you've got to share it around. And I think the other thing that you were talking about, which was really spot on, was when you're talking about you actually need a project. Like it's like you actually do need to sort of expand the amount of things you've got on your plate a little bit. You don't want to have too little to do, and you don't want to be doing too much of the same thing that you did previously. You do need something new in the mix, and you need just enough pressure from little mini deadlines to sort of keep things buzzing. I think that's very true. I think sometimes some of your best ideas is when there's time pressure.
Yes, absolutely. It forces you to perform, and you don't have time to worry about the insignificant things. I think that's important. It's just very intentional. And I still look back before I had children. I was like, what did I do with all my time? It was so wasted.
It's so true. It's so true. Listen, I think we've covered some really interesting topics today, and I know I'm taking up way too much of your time. Just as a side thought, and I guess as a bit of a wrap up, because this podcast is called FM Radio, I thought we should do something, FM-ish. In our case, the FM in our name, of course, stands for funds management. But I've always thought, we should do something that's, radio related, weather report or a chopper in the air to tell us how bad the traffic is from Parramatta into the city. Haven't got the money for a helicopter. But I mean, just to keep it simple, I was thinking, if you're in your car and you're flicking around your favorite FM channels, what's the feel good song that you're going to stop on, do you think?
Well, in saying that, I have digital radio, so you have all these extra channels, and I'm a sucker for the Coles FM radio. It's got some classic bangers. But I was at Coles on the weekend listening to it, and my little 2-year-old was dancing with me to I think it's Jump for Your Love, the Pointer Sisters. Is that what it's?
No, really?
Yeah, we were fist pumping in the frozen aisle, and we were having a ball. So yeah, it's not a song; funny. It's a radio station, and it's Coles.
It's definitely a feel-good song, though, isn't it? What would that be? That'd be like, I don't know, 80s? Is it an 80s song?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
Apparently, all the old songs are back. I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about Britney Spears just sold her catalogue for $200 million or something. I don't even know how that works. They sell a catalogue of songs, and then someone sees that as an investment and says, I can make $2 or $3 million off that. It's a long-term investment. Yeah. But a lot of people have sold their catalogues, and they're saying it's because it's very much in demand because people are going back to, in their heads, to simpler times. Even if they weren't born in that era, they're going back to when life was simpler.
Oh, I love that.
And so people love all the old, ABBA and, I don't know, AC/DC, Queen, whatever. They go back to all that in Pointer Sisters that you're dancing to in Coles. It's all that stuff that's when music was made probably more organically as well, but
Absolutely.
Life was simpler. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Jess. I can definitely picture you and your son dancing around the Coles aisles, filling your trolley with Pointer Sisters' Jump. It's a great song. I guess I better let you jump back into work now. I've probably used up enough of your time for the day, and you've got a busy one ahead of you. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of FM Radio. We hope you can join us again soon as we tune into another aspect of funds management that affects you and your clients. For more FM radio episodes and full transcripts of the interviews, visit elston.com.au. And if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast series so you don't miss a thing, you'll find FM radio on your favourite platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The information provided in this podcast is general in nature. You must consider your own circumstances prior to making an investment decision. For more information, go to elston.com.au or talk to your financial advisor. Elston Asset Management is authorised by EP Financial Services, AFSL number 325252.